What's up, CHFFL? And Merry Christmas Eve. Happy to have you guys here. Wes just called me out in Discord, and he's absolutely right. I was not planning on doing Mishcast today. Got some family obligations, but Marty requested, and how often is Marty still around in the semifinals? That's an actual statistical question. Not that often, so we're happy for him. We're going to cover these two playoff games really fast. We're going to start, though, with Parker and the Young Boat Gong royalty against Wes and his Psy Ducks. Parker, not a great start to this one. 25 points from Joe Mixon and Cooper Kupp and Evan McPherson as kicker. Kickers all over the place. The instability really making a difference this season. Mixon at 11, I think Parker's fine with, but it's Cooper Kupp only at 11. Not too happy. Wes, though, also slow. Alvin Kamara only 8.5 points there. And of course, can't fault him. Left 45.5 on the bench. George Pickens. How unstable the Steelers' offense has been, and Pickens has been having his diva moments. Obviously, you weren't going to trust him in the playoffs, but I'm sure it still feels bad to look on the bench, see that many points missing. Parker, I'm wondering, Parker's publicly predicted that the Rams finish the season strong, and he's obviously a big Matt Stafford fan. Go Dogs. He left Stafford on the bench in favor of Tua, and I mean, Tua, Miami against Dallas could absolutely be a shootout. Tua could score 40 points, but as of right now, Stafford had a good game, 22 points. That's also on the bench for Parker. So right now, Wes projected to win on ESPN. Fantasy Pros likes Wes more before any games are played, and with the start, I'd say favoring him slightly just because of Parker's disappointment with Kupp and the kicker. Wes definitely favored by the experts and statistics at this point. But let's look at where Parker could make it up. Bijan Robinson against Indianapolis. Arthur Smith is the devil down in Georgia, and people are calling for his head more than I think Steelers were calling for Matt Canada's head. Completely ruined Bijan in round one of the playoffs, just hardly used him. But there's been a bit of a trend. When Bijan is completely omitted from Arthur Smith's playbook, he then goes back to getting him involved. So 1 carry in week 7, then he's up to 11 the next week, 11, then 22, as more and more of the media outrage hits Arthur Smith's ears. So it's perfectly possible Bijan returns to being a bell cow this week. That's somewhere where Parker can make this up. Trey McBride, I could see outscoring Dalton Schultz a good bit. Now, back to Bijan, the Colts are not an easy matchup defensively, but he's extremely talented, and if they were to lean into him, I still could see it. Isaiah Pacheco, love that matchup with the Raiders. He could certainly continue what's been a strong season. He's gotten over 20 the last 2 weeks. I could see him getting over 20 again. Parker could make up some points there. Broncos against New England could end up being a really good defensive score. But let's look at Wes. Patrick Mahomes, disappointing on the year. Still a top 10 fantasy quarterback, easily feel fine starting him. Brees Hall, the Jets are just such a dumpster fire. They had 2.8 last week while Wes was happily on the bye. Otherwise, though, it had been about 10 weeks before that since he had fewer than 10 points. So you expect him to not be quite as bad this week. Adams, A.J. Brown, very strong, especially with Kupp only having 11. You like West to win there. Then Rashad White at Jacksonville. White has just been a PPR monster. So looking at everything, Parker obviously has an uphill battle from this point. I'm not going to go against that. I'm taking Wes. But there certainly is opportunity. I could see Tua outscoring Mahomes by 15 or 20 points. I could see Bijan having a 25-point day and Brees Hall only having 10 or so. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for Parker to come back. He certainly has a lot to still be watching for today. But as of right now, Wes is in control in the fantasy heart and soul conference. Now let's get to our game of the week and Marty's Christmas gift that we're going to cover. Mark's Can You Digs It Sucka versus Marty's New Age Outlaws in the Attitude Era Conference Championship. Marty very happy trading me for Josh Allen earlier in the year. I'm hoping it pays off for him so that I can get that conditional pick bumped up from a third to a second. But Allen had 27 points last night. Even if he looks ugly, even if he does make some turnovers, just for fantasy purposes, he's the best quarterback to have. Marty's very happy with that. Marty has the rest of his roster still to play, including most of his bench. Mark, on the other hand, has already had 3 players go and probably beat Allen only by 11 points. Kyron Williams, 20 points. Obviously, Mark's happy with that. Whole story with his team this year has been the 0 running back strategy, and Kyron's been a great fill-in. But you're looking to get an upset. We're hoping Kyron would have, he had a 40-point week a couple weeks ago. So, unfortunately, even 20 points, not quite what you were hoping for. Jalen Warren, 10. Again, that's solid. Diggs at 8 points, especially you had Diggs opposite Allen, and you're hoping that he can counterbalance Allen's points. That's really disappointing for Mark. So, right now, Marty projected to win by 22 on ESPN, and Fantasy Pros had Marty as a 98 this week, Mark down at an 80. So with the hot start, I'd say right now Marty's in an even better position than Wes is pretty easily. Another thing to note, and feels bad at this point. I'm not trying to kick Grant when he's down, but Grant projected this week for the highest score again, just like he's been almost every week since making the big trades, even though he's lost most of his games. This is a really good lesson for everybody moving forward on how players' name value artificially inflates their actual value later in the season. Because guys that have just not been performing for Grant are still in the consensus rankings higher than they should be. It's disappointing what happened to him this season, but we try to learn from these lessons when we can. Now, back to the game. Have Lamar Jackson against San Francisco. Obviously, there's no reason he couldn't match Josh Allen. Jackson averaging 20 points a game. Scored 18 last week, but 35 the week before against the Rams. I don't like it being on the road, and obviously San Francisco, tough game for everybody on every side of the ball. So I don't expect him to outscore Allen, but it's always in the cards when you have a running quarterback like that. He gets some rushing touchdowns. Devonta Smith, good matchup with the Giants. But he has not been quite what you've wanted this year. He's position ranked 15, so I guess that's about where he was being drafted, but you had some hopes that he was going to really step up and be 1B to Browns 1A, and in my book, he just hasn't quite been that. He's pretty solidly been the number 2 on a good offense. It's produced good points, but 10 each of the last 2 weeks, not particularly inspiring. But Giants good matchup. Could get a touchdown. Would be pretty good there. Just Jake Ferguson and Zeke. Again, both can get into the end zone. I'm worried about Mark because he doesn't have a lot of upside left with Diggs having posted such a dud. That's really tough. Jamar Chase out. Didn't play last night. Not looking too good for Mark. One of the biggest areas I would say you can make up ground is defense. I don't know if Marty's going to start Dallas against Miami. I understand you're a Dallas fan. I would rather go with the matchup. Packers against against Carolina. And Miami, I could see the Cowboys winning that game. I could see that game being 80 total points. I don't like starting that defense in that situation, especially Mark has the Eagles D against the Giants. Now, I know the Eagles D has been really, really disappointing this year compared to kind of where expectations were because their secondary is just so weak. But if you had to look for a good game, it's the Giants, and the Eagles can get after the quarterback. They haven't really done it this year. The highest score for this defense this year is 15 and 14 after that, and those were both in the first 3 weeks. With the playing the Giants, they're at home. I could see the Eagles D having a big game. That's where I would look. And then I talked a lot about kickers. So you hope that your kicker can have a really big game. But I like Marty significantly more here. As the year of Marty rolls on, he's obviously in a strong spot. I'm taking him to win this week. Thank you for anybody who's tuned in. I know this was kind of last minute, so I imagine most people are going to be watching this after it's recorded. But I want to say Merry Christmas to you guys and thanks for another great season. Good luck, everybody.